Does summer camp need a union? Hello, Camp Mavericks. Welcome to the CampHacker Podcast. My name is Travis Allison. I work for Go Camp Pro, and I am excited to be with you on this CampHacker's 150th episode, the first episode of our 12th season. Welcome to the show.
I'm Ruby Compton. I'm the Chief Exploration Officer for Ruby Outdoors and a podcast host of the staff training podcast, Camp Code.
Hello, my name is Alana Matteson, and I am currently a Trader Joe's crew member, but have just about 8 years of year-round camp experience, including being a program manager, an assistant camp director, and a camp director as well.
Welcome to CampHacker, Elena, and Camp Code. This is a co-production of the CampHacker Podcast and the Camp Code Podcast. As we begin our season off here together, we've been brought together by Elena and her very smart question in the Summer Camp Professionals group. And it was a topic that definitely got some interest, surprisingly less pushback than I thought, but some pushback. And so I thought it would be good to spend some time and talk on this. So we're grateful to have you, Elena, join us on CampHacker for the first time. And thank you for this amazing idea and your thoughtfulness in bringing up this topic. We're grateful to have you. Where this all comes out of, we're recording in September 2021. So that'll just, if you're listening later in time, you throw yourself back to that time and remember what that summer was like. It has been a tremendous year and a half for camp people, and very stressful, and lots of big changes. And I want to ask you, Elena, why you raised the question at this time. But I want to get one thing, just so the kind of I can get away from it so we can focus on this discussion. One of the things that this brings up for me is that I'm choosing to think of this as an opportunity, that we need to, not just in the camp industry, the whole world needs to better value people who work in child and youth development. And we need to put more value in that. That's a bigger discussion than what happens today. I certainly see that is one arm of all of the arms that would need to come with a solution. So I just want to acknowledge that. And then I want to focus on this very specific discussion. So Elena, what brought this up for you, and what made you put the question out there?
Yeah, so, it's been kind of this theme of better pay, better conditions in general for employees has been a conversation happening not just in the camping industry, but with just the federal minimum wage and all of that movement as well. So I think that partially is part of what was on my mind, and then also just hearing from other camp professionals, as well as so hearing about traumatic experiences, basically, or not being supported by their employers, or being let go, and then also having a traumatic experience of my own, that kind of led me to realize that in the last 2 years, a year and a half or so, lots of things have changed, kind of globally. And I think in the camping industry, lots of organizations have been impacted, and I'd be interested to see kind of a breakdown between camp directors and program directors versus your executive directors, or the leadership of organization, the board of directors of different organizations, just seeing who has carried the brunt of that these changes. I've seen a lot of people get let go, and it doesn't always seem to make the most sense when you look at the organizational breakdown. And I know that some of those things can't be avoided. We're in a global pandemic here, and all of that, but I where I see a need is in that the people who are really in charge of big decisions aren't always the people that are involved in the day-to-day, don't always see those 60 plus hours you're working, even in the off season. They don't always see all that goes into it. And so I've just been reflecting on this idea of how we can give them the tools to move the camping industry forward into a more equitable, supportive space where we're taking care of people and where we are an example for other industries. And I think where camping is at puts us at a really neat position to be an example for other industries, right? So we intersect with all these different, childcare, food service, therapeutic interventions, all these different industries that also could be impacted by a move to more equitable practices in camping. So that's kind of a little bit of the background behind my thoughts. And yeah,
this discussion, and there's a lot of pieces of this I want to pick up, but this discussion has so many undertones of those executives or those older directors, has so many undertones of people saying that hazing's okay because it was done to them. It's like, well, I did that many hours, and it has so many undertones of that I find pretty gross. But people in those positions of power do not seem to be sensitive to how the world has changed, how the care that we offer is changed, how our clients have changed, et cetera. Ruby, for you, what are some of your initial thoughts and things that, well, what are your initial thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I saw this first come up on Twitter and was kind of like yes, tell me more, and here's some questions that come to mind right away. But I think the point that you just made, Travis, is really smart, that for so long, it was, this is what the industry is. If you don't like it, you can go somewhere else. And we are very much a churn and burn industry, that we can hire the next great camp leader, and if in 4 years they leave, that's fine. There's going to be people lined up to take their position. That's not the case anymore. And we saw that in 2018 and 2019. We were starting to already see this, like, oh, I can't staff my camp. And then throw in a global pandemic, and everybody kind of realized, like, whew, it does not have to be this way. And the number of folks that I know that have left camping in the last 2 years is a lot.
Yeah, it's stunning.
So many folks. And I just don't think that we're just going to recover without some pretty big changes. And I work for an outdoor ed program that we had a week of a backpacking program that we couldn't run because we couldn't staff it. And that was what it came down to. And the school said, we're not comfortable with your staffing plan. And we're like, well, that's all we got. So I think you're going to see more and more programs running into that. And I think what's also so frustrating about it is there are lots of different camps, and lots of camps that are tied into bigger organizations, and there's lots of red tape in some of those, but there are also camps that are small and nimble and can pretty much make any decision that they want. And that's where I find it particularly frustrating that we're not seeing some of these changes happen. And we have to, as an industry, make some of these changes all together, because that one camp that's over there paying way more than everybody else, or giving way more benefits to their staff, or charging way more to the parents, or seeking out creative funding, they can't be the only one doing it. So if they're the only ones doing it, it's not going to take hold. So we have to think creatively going forward.
And there are pockets and particular examples that come up that people that you would recognize as speakers that run camps that frequently speak, but are also camp owners and leaders who are paying a good wage to seasonal staff in very tough industries. Now, their parents are, it's coming from what the parents pay is that difference, but they are willing to put a stake in the ground and say, well, and this is the thing that always frustrates me too, is your life would be so much easier if you paid your staff well, in leadership or as an owner. People just ignore, and this is so much about camp, and this is why I have talked on the show and in lots of other programs that I've done about people understanding the value of their time, what an hour of your time as a camp leader is worth, because people do not understand, people ignore how much expectations is put on people's time that they are not being compensated for properly. Are there other problems or things, Elena, that come up for you? I want to talk about what we can do about it, but some other problems that we haven't really touched on that you've been thinking about.
Yeah, so I think a great kind of idea or way to look at this is kind of where we want to be in the future, where the industry wants to go and where it is currently going. So like some things I see in that is that I think most camp directors, they want to be able to equip their seasonal staff for future jobs. They want to give them the tools they need to advocate a better salary or to negotiate those types of things. And then overall, I really think that, as I said, that camp directors in general want the industry to be an example for other industries. In thinking about ways to get there, I think an idea I've had is thinking about the ways that camp directors can ask organizations like the American Camp Association to support us. And, that might look like changing some accreditation standards to include these types of things, or, just providing a guide to those people in leadership or in the decision-making arenas to, that describes kind of what the best practices are for hiring a camp director. I think that's something that we don't really see right now. I think a lot of camp professionals are looking for support. I think they're looking for fair pay. I think they're looking for fair hours or some sort of, hour limit. I think they need a breakdown of what it really means to include housing or seasonal housing, because those are big issues. You see a job posting that provides housing, and that can be really good, or it can be, a pretty rough conditions. And, what does it mean to have a seasonal housing or be required to live on camp during the summer? And then, what are you going to do for the rest of the 9 months? So I also think summer camp professionals are looking for some sort of equity when it comes to family life. And I think people with kids feel that. And I think single people who are asked to cover for their coworkers with kids also feel that. As a single person, I know I have asked to be doing, some of those things while coworkers go pick up their kids or that kind of thing. So, and then I think camp professionals also see a need for protections for counselors or seasonal staff. I think they also want them to have fair pay, fair hours, appropriate housing, all those things too. So I kind of like broke down the issues that I see in this arena, and that's really, you know, that support of having friends or, you know, a support network, fair pay, fair hours, housing, and that family life piece is really important as well.
Well, and can I add on to that, I think one of the things that people will say when we talk about how we are looking for, asking for, or asking folks to just consider what it would look like if camp did some of these things that other industries do or are striving to do, they go, well, camp is different. And I think you can still hold the truth of camp is different, and there may need to be some different terminology or different considerations, but that doesn't mean all that other stuff goes out the window. And I think that's a trap a lot of folks fall into.
Yeah, it totally. Even the pride with which we say we are youth development professionals and we don't honor our own people in that way is frustrating at minimum, rude at, you know, that because, you know, certainly having childcare, it blows my mind. We were lucky enough when we were directing that we had seasonal childcare all the time. So before Beth and I were married, Beth had 2 young kids at camp, and so we had childcare for her. That was just a part of her job that was provided. So it's just weird that we run a youth development organization and we don't provide those things to people. So many people I've seen in the parenting at camp group talk about having to pay for their own babysitters or nannies to come to camp and then pay the camp to have that person eat meals at the camp too. It's gross. And family leave as well. Just when people have a baby, that there is paid family leave of a reasonable amount. I know that is a cultural and legal difference between Canada and the US, but either way, it's hard to call ourselves, youth development agencies or organizations and not honor folks in that way. So yeah, that's a good point. And I think the other piece around pay is important too. And, publicly stating what the benefits are in job listings is a very small step towards equity, and having staff not be contractually prohibited from discussing their salaries too, is incredibly important to this openness, where I assume organizations would be scared to just find out that one staff member is a better negotiator than another, but they're doing the same job, is terrifying for those figures in that spot. So what do we do?
Yeah, so I've obviously been thinking a lot about this, and kind of what
that's why you're here.
Yeah.
We wanted to hear what you're thinking about.
Yeah. So, one of the things I've come up with to explore is the idea. I don't know all of the specifics of what you need to do to have a union exactly. It doesn't sound like what we need is going to actually be a union, literally, but I do think we need some sort of organization for camp directors and for other summer camp professionals as well, but focused on kind of gathering and putting together these best practices around hiring and benefits and all of that, and something also where we can help our counselors and seasonal staff advocate for themselves as well. And I think that is sort of a sub part to what I have in mind, where we can kind of build this structure so that counselors can join it from their individual camps and have that opportunity. And I'd also love for part of that to be them creating some type of report about their summer and their experience working at that specific camp, so that the next year when hiring comes around, potential counselors or staff members can look up where that camp falls on these certain issues. I think that's something that could be helpful, but mainly my goal would be to get some of these bigger organizations to recognize and see the need for some sort of either addition to accreditation or something that really notates how important this is. And so that would kind of be something that I have in mind. Would be we would advocate for better wages and more fair conditions across the industry. We would kind of collect information or that kind of thing to let people know what a summer at camp would look like. Those kinds of things. Yeah.
We file this under information wants to be free. There's a lot of tools these days for sharing more information about your work conditions, about salary, etc. Something like Glassdoor.com is common in other industries, that people will report their salaries and the conditions that they work under there. So it helps other people decide whether or not they want to work for that organization. If camps aren't looking for themselves on Glassdoor.com, they're missing some things. But that is a spot, because I think some of the stuff is this. I don't think we have to build it from scratch, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There are tools out there. There is no doubt that a lot of the growth of this will likely come from private chats and little ad hoc things that people set up to start to coordinate and gather information. But there are places that some of that stuff comes out too.
Yeah, I mean, I can say in our area in Western North Carolina, there's a lot of camps, and we have a pretty active emerging professionals in camping group. And we've a couple of times at the winter retreat had folks fill out an anonymous survey. So it was nobody had any information about who said what, but people filled out information about their pay and benefits. And then we all got access to that afterwards. And there's something really nice about being like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm kind of like right in the middle of the road, or like, whoa, I'm on the way low end of what everybody else is getting offered. And it asked for, again, some of the unique things that we do get at camp, things like housing, things like flexible work schedules during the off season, things like being able to have pets at work. That may not be something that's allowed everywhere, and so even just that little bit and taking time to do that with folks in the area was really, really educational. And I can't help but wonder, there is such a thing as living wage certified. Like, how many camps have that certification? It's something I would notice if I saw it on a job description, I think, for a camp job. And so I wonder if that's something that more camps maybe want to look at pursuing, or, as Alana is saying, is there some kind of special living wage certified or working condition certified or something that needs to be developed that can be, it's going to be more paperwork, but a seal of approval that can say, like, this has been reviewed by outside folks, and what we're doing, we're doing all the things we're saying we're doing, and this is hospitable to a professional's growth and well-being.
Yep, definitely. And I think that because our audience through Camp Code and CampHacker is both senior administration down to people who want to work full-time in the industry but aren't yet, everybody needs to understand that this is a seller's market, that staff have more power, and this history of pushing people to only put clients first to their own, to the staff's detriment, it's not going to be possible for organizations to continue to be successful if they aren't aware of these issues and more sensitive to them. As we wrap it up, Ruby, is there a final thought or something that you've been thinking of to put a bow on this for you?
I just want to throw out two other jobs that are kind of similar to camp, have a lot of similarities. The first one is touring roadies. So the people who go on tour with a band that's traveling for 3 months or whatever during the summer, let's say, and that they do have a union for these stagehands and the folks that are putting all the tech stuff together and traveling with the band, and they get per diems for food and all that sort of stuff. And so I think that that's one place that if you're like, okay, what might this look like, especially for a seasonal kind of short-term job, I think that's one industry that you could look in and see some of the practices they're doing. Another one, and I'm like kind of ashamed to admit this, but I've been watching a lot of Below Deck over the last couple of months. And there are many times, if you're not familiar with Below Deck, it's a reality TV show. It's about yachting and rich and famous, right? Or on lots of money to burn. But there's so many times I'm watching it and there's like really great things that I see that happen. And I'm like, like camp directors could do this job, or like, you could learn so much about the management here. But also like a camp director could walk into a yachting job and be fine. I have like full confidence. And they get to the end of their 3 days or whatever is their charter. And they're basically dealing with children who are they're not children, but it's adults who've been drinking a lot. And they get to the end of the charter and they get to take a tip. And like that tip is going to be $1,600. Like, can you imagine? And I know it's a different population, but can you imagine if after like 3 to 5 days of work, you were walking home with $2,000 in your pocket? Like, I mean, right now I'm considering working on a big sailboat or a big yacht in the Mediterranean. So I just think that there are answers out there. We just have to look outside of the bubble a little bit and think creatively.
Yes. And I would say, I hope our goal is to get wages to a point where tipping is frowned upon because people are getting paid what they're worth. But I take your point, Ruby, and thank you for those great ideas. Elena, any wrap-up thoughts or things, maybe a call to action for folks?
Yeah, so I think that one thing that kind of gives people pause when they think about this and think about paying their camp director more or their staff more is their program and the kids they serve. And that is a really valid concern. I think that fair pay and fair accommodations, fair working conditions is going to require kind of a whole reset on the way that organizations look at their budgets and what kind of programs they can and can't afford. I've said this a lot, I've tweeted a lot, but I really believe that an organization that can't afford to pay their staff fairly is an organization that can't afford to run the program they're running. And I just think that's it basically. If we are if that's our main hesitation, then we need to look at what else we're doing. We're doing too much if we can't afford to pay our staff. So I just think that's something that's really important and is going to cause a lot of people to really rethink the way that they're doing things, rethink the programs that they're providing. And I don't want to see less campers at camp. That's not my goal here. My goal is to really grow the industry and to just support the people that want to be there and grow more and grow more fairly and equitably. So I think that's a big thought that I also wanted to bring up was just this idea of if you can't afford to pay staff a fair wage, you really can't afford your program, and what that means for different organizations. The other kind of like call to action thing would be to just join our conversations on the Facebook group, Summer Camp Professionals. You can also send me an email. I'm sure we'll talk about our contact information and stuff. I'm working on building up just kind of another area where we can have these conversations for people who are ready to be constructive and do some work in actually brainstorming what this type of organization or something looks like. So if you want in on that, then feel free to send me an email. And I also have a Google form that I've posted on Instagram, on the Summer Camp Professionals Facebook page. And so you can fill that out and I'll have your information. And the responses I've gotten from that, I think I have like 36 or something so far. And just some of the things like that people have said in their comments, things like, this is so relieving that we're having this conversation. Just very people, that word is one that really sticks with me, relief. I think it's something we've all been thinking about and worrying about for, something I thought about when I started my career in camping 8 years ago. So I think now with the pandemic, it's kind of inspired more conversations. So yeah, you can follow along or hang out. And I know this is coming out in a couple of weeks, so we'll be a few more people will come out of their post-summer hiding away and hoping that we can have some more conversations in the next few weeks and see where this is all going.
That is great. Well, we're so grateful for you bringing up this topic, Alana, and for what you've added to the discussion before today and today. So thank you for that. At this time, then, we want to take a moment and just thank our sponsors.
Hey friends, do you remember your why for getting into camping in the first place? I'm guessing it didn't involve sitting in front of a computer screen clicking in a database. Sometimes all the busy work and button clicking associated with running camp keeps us from seeing why we are there. That's why I encourage you to get to know my friends at Ultra Camp. Ultra Camp helps you get back to spending time remembering why you love working at camp. How do they do this? Ultra Camp takes the stress out of using their registration software. With Ultra Camp, you don't have to worry about limits. You have unlimited custom reports, unlimited support, unlimited training, and unlimited users. If you think all this sounds too good to be true, friends, it is real. Visit ultracampmanagement.com/campcode. My friends at Ultra Camp would love to show you a future where you finally have the time to get back to what's really important, running camp. Visit their website, ultracampmanagement.com/campcode, and set up a time to chat.
So then that brings us here to the tool of the week. If you're joining us for the first time because you love what Alana's doing and you are following her journey, and this is your first time listening to CampHacker Podcast, or you're a Camp Code listener and checking out CampHacker for the first time, we ask each of our co-hosts to bring a tool of the week, something that makes their jobs or their lives a little better. And it's often related to the career, but not solely related to the career. So we have some fun tools to talk about today. Ruby, would you mind going first, please?
Yep. So during the pandemic, one of the skills that I've crafted or honed is meal planning and making a giant grocery list and going only like once every couple of weeks. And so as you meal plan, you get kind of burned out on thinking of ideas. So finally I was like, I'm just going to make a big list of all the meals that I am willing to cook. And they're sorted by protein. Obviously the proteins can be swapped around, but there's, just some that typically go with a certain protein. But this is really the tool, which is if I look at that list and I go, I don't want to cook any of this stuff, then it's my responsibility to look up a new recipe. So that has been a really good strategy for incorporating something new periodically, but also making my life a little easier when I'm trying to put together a meal plan.
Right on. That's great. Thank you, Ruby. Alana, what's your tool?
Yeah, so my tool are my headphones. They are Power Beats. I bought them on Amazon. I got an iPhone a few months ago and did not want AirPods because I was so worried I was going to lose one because there's nothing connecting them to anything. So I bought a pair of Power Beats, which are Beats headphones, and they're the little earbud, but they're connected by the wire that goes, connects each of them together. I use them all the time. They stay charged for about a week for me. Apparently it's about 15 hours of playtime. And I use them all the time. I walk my dogs, twice a day, and I'm always wearing headphones around the house and that kind of thing. So definitely suggest those if you are in the market for some new headphones.
Excellent. And the headphones and my tool of the week will be available at camphacker.tv/podcast, where you can find our show notes from this and other episodes. I'm going to do my tool of the week. If you're not watching us on YouTube, I am holding up a gray plastic plug-in thing that is an electric knife sharpener. And I love it for kitchen knives and cutting stuff, but I also have sharpened the knife in my go bag. I am the kind of person who carries a pocket knife, which I keep super sharp. And I was trying to learn how to use a whetstone properly and properly hone knives, and it was fine. I was lucky enough to spend a small piece of an inheritance on my very first professional chef's knife, and I could not keep that sharp. And so I was reading around and I saw this and I was like, yeah, that's what I need. And so every knife in the house is super sharp now. If you wanted to keep it in your camp office and keep your pocket knives and your tripper's knives sharp, and the rescue knives that people keep on their jackets, you might be a very popular person at camp if you had one of these work sharp combo knife sharpeners. I recommend that for my tool.
The chef at one of the outdoor ed programs I worked for used to always sharpen his knives every week, right as the parents arrived. He would do it right in the window that looked into the kitchen. It was like, don't mess with Johnny.
That is so great. That is awesome. Well, I want to thank you both for being a part of this discussion, giving up some time to commit to the community. I'm so grateful for all that both of you have done for the camp community and your contributions to raising the discussion. Elena, I wanted to spend just a quick sec before we let you go and just ask a couple of questions. How did you get started at camp? Not necessarily as a job, but how did you get started at camp as a kid, if you did?
Yeah. So I did grow up going to camp. I actually, when I was too young to go to camp, I went with my parents to drop my older sister off, and I wanted to stay very badly. I was very sad that I was not staying. So I like to imagine myself there around all these girls, because it was an all girls camp, all these girls who are already homesick, not wanting to leave their moms, very sad, and then me there, very sad that I can't stay at camp. So I started going as young as I could, and just loved being there, loved being outside, loved the energy, loved everything about it. And as I grew up, I went through the CIT program, was a counselor, unit leader, all of that. Eventually became the assistant director year-round as at the camp I grew up at, and really loved doing that. And then took another job out in Iowa, and was there for a few years, and then was also briefly a camp director in Vermont for a few months as well. So yeah.
If you think back on some of the camp leaders that you most looked up to, why did you look up to them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I looked up to them because they were honest, they were open, they were compassionate, and energetic, and I really, loved being around them and felt seen and heard around them.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. Well, Lena, I am so grateful again for you to bring up this topic and for joining us to talk about it here today on Camp Code and CampHacker. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
If people want to follow up, they want to fill in your form. So specifically in the form, you're just looking for people who are interested in expanding this discussion. Is that correct? They want to be involved in this discussion going forward. Okay.
Yes, very low commitment. I'm not asking anybody to be the president of an organization or anything yet. Just people who are more interested in hearing more, maybe being on the email list, or interested in hearing what's going on. So yeah.
Great. That's great. So we will post a link to that in the show notes at camphacker.tv/podcast, and at Ruby's link, where the show notes are for Camp Code. Ruby, I don't know the URL off the top of my head. I'm sorry. What's your Camp Code URL?
If you go to camphacker.tv/campcode, we'll get you there.
There you go. Perfect. Alana, if people want to get in touch with you otherwise, how do they do that?
Yeah, you can follow me across platforms at Matteson, Matteson 1. So there's 2 M's in there.
2 M's and 2 T's?
Yeah. Yep.
Great.
And I'm on, that's Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all of those. So yeah.
That's great. Thanks again for being here, Alana.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm a big fan of CampHacker and always love spending time with you both. So happy to be here.
That's great. Thank you. Ruby, if people want to get in touch with you?
For sure. You can send me an email, ruby@rubyoutdoors.com. You can find me on Instagram at rubyoutdoors. And you can also follow me on Twitter at rubylyn85.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Ruby. And thanks for combining for this first show of the season.
So good. So good.
All right on. Well, I want to thank everybody for being a listener. If you're watching this on YouTube, we ask that you click on subscribe and join us so you get notified when we put out new videos of all of our shows, not just CampHacker and Camp Code, but all of the Go Camp Pro podcasts. At this time, I thought I would institute a new idea. I want to take just a second and highlight some of the other shows from our network. And today, in particular, I want to encourage you to check out a show called First Class Counselors. Matt, who's our executive producer of podcasting, and Oliver talk about and offer a short bit of training for seasonal staff. It is built for camp leaders like those who listen to CampHacker and Camp Code to pass on to their seasonal staff. And some really interesting discussion, some great guests. And I hope you'll check that out. I will have many more Go Camp Pro podcast recommendations, including stuff like Beyond Camp that Alana has been on before. But for this moment, I ask you to subscribe to First Class Counselors, because there's some great stuff going on there and very valuable things that I think you could pass on to your summer seasonal staff as well. Once again, our show notes are at camphacker.tv/podcast and camphacker.tv/campcode. And we're super grateful to have you. And thank you both for being here. And thanks for the evening, friends.